Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to Awakening with the Girls.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Awakening with the Girls. I am super excited to be here today with an amazing goddess that has so many amazing topics to cover, and I just think you will all benefit if you can stay tuned to this full episode. So, Amara, please tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do in your spiritual journey.
Yeah, thanks, Shannon. Hi, everyone. I'm Amara Amethyst. I am a vibrational healer and a priestess of the goddess, and I love all things womb related. I'm a little bit womb obsessed. Live a womb centric life right now, and I love it. My spiritual path has gone through a lot of different phases. When I was a little girl, my parents took me to church a little bit, but not that much. So that was kind of like my first taste of religion and spirituality in a group. And then I moved through kind of some different phases of mindfulness meditation in the Zen Buddhist tradition, and practicing a lot of yoga and exploring the yogic path, and connecting a lot with nature, and more of like a pagan, earth-centered path, which feels really, it's that has been kind of like an underlying one for me, is connection with nature and the natural world. And as that continued to grow and change, I all of a sudden had this like awakening, enlightening experience of being told to connect with the goddess and create a mobile goddess temple. And so that started my deep devotional path to the divine feminine in all of her many forms. And that's the path that I've been really strongly following for the last 7.5 years now. And I feel like one of the beautiful things about our time is that we have access to so much information and so many different ways of being, and things are really a lot more open for us than maybe they have been in the past. And so I really appreciate that about this time period and in being alive. And so I do still kind of dabble in the other paths that I mentioned before, with a really strong focus on paganism and goddess spirituality.
I love that. I try not to put myself in a box either. I think it's really important to be able to connect with like the earth and the fairies and different elementals and mythical creatures in the same sense as connecting with more religious and ancestral figures. And I like to connect with, I really like to connect with priestesses, like the energy of Mary Magdalene and also the energy of archangels, which often are considered religious connections, but I really enjoy exploring different like Wiccan and witchy type topics too. My friends like to call me kind of like an angel witch because I like to connect with angels, and I've been connecting with the angels for as long as I can remember. But I also just have this deep love for Mary Magdalene, and also holding like rituals and connecting with crystals, and I think it's just really kind of crazy and ridiculous how much the divine feminine energy got taken out of a lot of the scriptures and the religious platforms that are out there in the books and things like that. And I know that I'm pretty sure it was about 6 or 7 years ago that you and I crossed paths and we met at your goddess temple at an event, and it was for like a Magdalene and a divine feminine workshop that you were hosting. And it was so powerful to me because I was really in that deep dive, and I too was kind of questioning like, how do I navigate this love for almost like a religious figure when I feel so connected to this other type of spiritual path? And part of the reason I created this podcast was I really wanted to be able to express to other people, but especially women who are trying to navigate like, am I into witchcraft? Am I into archangels? Am I into Christianity? Am I into Buddhism? Like, they feel like they have to put themselves in this container, this box. And I think it's really important for people to just really explore what is most important to them. And I think it's really beautiful that you do just explore what is most guided by your heart. And I'm just kind of curious if you have any idea about like when or what age you may have been when you kind of really dove into your spiritual journey.
I feel like it's always been a thing, but I didn't know that it was a thing. Um, when I was younger, when I was really little, and when you're saying connecting with the elementals and fairies and angels and all the magical elemental beings, it's reminding me that I didn't say that. And that's been some of my like deepest ongoing lifelong connections with spirit. When I was a little girl, I used to always connect with other realms, particularly with unicorns and like going other places in my imagination or astral projecting, which I thought I was just playing because that's what I was told. But I think for me, it started really young. And then I had a really poignant experience of awakening when I was a teenager. When I was 14 years old, I actually got really, really sick, and I was diagnosed eventually with chronic fatigue syndrome, which is an autoimmune disease. But it basically means that you have a bunch of symptoms that they can't diagnose as anything else, so that's what they call it. So I was really sick, and I was bedridden off and on for a couple of years. And during that time, that's when I really had the full-on embodied experience of knowing that I was more than my actions, my thoughts, my emotions, my body, because I had a direct experience of being more than that. So I think that was a really strong point where I think I had been very, very focused on school and sports and other activities, and then I just had to completely stop everything, and it was like I was just getting redirected towards this more spiritual, ethereal connection.
So you said that you kind of dove into your awakening when you were more of a teenager. I'm curious if you can remember kind of like how that felt for you. Because part of the reason I also made this podcast too was because I know when I started my journey, it was really overwhelming. I felt kind of alone and a little scared because, you know, I'm over here connecting with like elementals and fairies and connecting with these entities or archangels. And to me, I'm being told that like maybe there's like a schizophrenic, or maybe I'm not connecting with these energies, or it's just my imagination. And I very much felt like they were helping me and helping other people and giving me warnings. And I'm just kind of curious what it was like for you being a teenager, and what kind of energy do you remember feeling, or maybe what did you do to connect deeper? Did you have other friends that were like maybe connecting with you, or kind of understood or got it?
Yeah, I felt I didn't, when I was that sick, I didn't have very many friends that I stayed close with through that. There was really just like one girl who like kind of stuck by my side, which was amazing. She's awesome. Shout out to Sarah Miller. Um, and yeah, she's awesome. So I didn't really have much of a sounding board. I, when I did eventually get well enough to like start going back to school part-time, I just remember seeing everything in a totally different way. And like I went back to high school and I was just like like what is going on? And I knew, like, I felt really different. And I had always felt different, but I just felt way more different even than I had felt before. And so I guess it was, and yet I really wanted to experience what I had experienced during those times again. Like I wanted to have that feeling of like full on melding with all that is, and knowing that truth of our essence, of our being divine. And I didn't know how to speak to that, or necessarily get back to that place either. And so I remember feeling really disoriented and kind of like alone in that, because I didn't know where to look for other people who had had a similar experience, or even what to say about it at that time.
So it kind of opened that door for yourself. Yeah, so that's part of the purpose of this container, is to really help people that if they feel that way, or they feel alone, they feel crazy, to be able to reach out and to figure out where to look and what they can do to get themselves in alignment with their soul mission.
Yeah, I really started looking at what did I do at that time? Books. Yeah, I started to read a lot of books that Tict, hanh, who's a Zen Buddhist monk, had written, that my father was sharing with me. Once I started talking about all of this, my dad was like, "Here, I found these books. You will probably like them." And so I was reading. Yeah, and so he actually, a lot of it was through my dad. And he shared those books with me. He had also started doing yoga, so I think he bought me like a yoga DVD that went through like an Ashtanga yoga flow. And so I started doing yoga, and I started reading these books about mindfulness and doing my own version of that practice. And I did want to like hang out with other people who had a more open mind. And what that actually showed up as at that time was kids who were partying because they were experimenting with substances. And so they were more like open to different things. Yeah, that's kind of the direction that I went with it, was these books and yoga and just trying to like branch out to different people that might have some sort of an understanding.
Yeah, I can really relate to that. I know that I connected with kind of a party crowd too. They definitely were more open-minded, but I know I personally, and I'm sure you did too, kind of like I evolved out of it pretty quick because I was surrounded by it, but yet they didn't want to evolve themselves. Not all of them, but the party scene was a really hard situation to navigate as a spiritual being. That's for sure. So maybe now that you've had some time to experience and explore, maybe you could give us some recommendations of some other resources or books or keys to the awakening that have really helped inspire you to dive deeper that you would like to recommend to others.
Well, we were talking earlier a little bit about Mary Magdalene, and I also feel a really strong connection with that frequency of energy. And there's a woman named Sofia who has written a lot of different books. She is a mystic, and she's also a spiritual teacher. And so I really love her books. Particularly, there's a book called Sacred Sexual Union. I think the subtitle is The Alchemy of Love, Power, and Wisdom. That was a really life-changing book for me. That is all about sacred sexuality and deeply knowing ourselves in order to be able to fully come into union with ourselves and with another or others. In her book, it's more with one other, but that one was really, really influential for me. Let's see what I know that there. And Hank Wiselmen is an author who has written a series of books about his experiences with shamanism. And those I find to be extremely interesting, and they're written from his perspective of his experience of studying shamanism and then having these spontaneous shamanic journeying experiences where he was able to connect with another aspect of himself living in a different timeline. And so I think that these books are extremely interesting because they really open up a lot of other, like what we're talking about, expanded understanding of what's possible.
Interesting. I really want to write a couple of these down so I can start making a resources and references list for Bring Me to Life, because I know that when I started my journey, it was so important to be able to find and access different topics and things. Another Mary Magdalene book that was really important to me is Mary Magdalene Revealed. It's like a bright red book that's really been inspiring to my Mary Magdalene journey. It had a lot of amazing content. So you're really big on sacred sexuality. You actually did a sacred sexuality series on Bring Me to Life, the flagship podcast. So I would love to kind of dive into that topic and to know more about what kind of set you on that path. So for somebody who's getting into the awakening, I know that it was really important for me to realize how energy worked, because people I interacted with in my early intimate years, their energy lingered and it was very heavy on me. It made me have a hard time interacting sexually, and I didn't realize that. So yeah, I mean, my partners wouldn't even like be interested in anything I had to say, like crystals or the spiritual journey, and that's fine. They didn't have to, but it was still like weighed on me and made sexual connections really kind of hard for me to navigate. So I would love for you to just kind of elaborate on your version of sacred sexuality and what your journey was into the awakening and intimate connection, as well as like whatever else you feel like you are guided to share in that topic right now.
I had some pretty painful personal experiences with sex and sexuality in my teenage years. And some of my first experiences with sexuality were really not healthy, and some of them were non-consensual, and I started to equate love with sex and a whole bunch of other mental and emotional things were going on there. But so I feel like I'm a very sensual and sexual person, as I believe that many, if not all of us, well, not all of us, but many of us are. There are, of course, people who are asexual or only feel attracted to certain people. So, of course, we're all different. But I feel like I am a pretty sexual person. And so I've always felt this kind of curiosity towards that. And I've always, not always, but ever since I experienced being sexually assaulted, I have felt a really strong urge to speak about that and about sexuality in general. So this has been since I was like 15 years old that I've been getting up in front of groups of people and just saying things. Now I do it in a much more appropriate context than I did at that time. But I had a lot of shame around my sexuality as well. Even though it felt like such a big part of me, I felt a lot of shame there. And so when I came across information that our sexual energy and our desire and our bodies are sacred and are natural and are beautiful, but especially the fact that they were being called sacred, I was like, whoa, like it felt so amazing. Like my whole body lit up and I was so excited. I was kind of like, it felt true in me, but I also still had some resistance because of a lot of programming from the society that we live in, our families, school, the media, all of that.
Yeah, I think it's wild how so many of us feel uncomfortable with our sexuality, and we're like programmed to really like bury this feeling or this connection to the divine in a deeper way. It seems like you had to really work through a lot of different sexual traumas, and it gave you a bigger or a deeper voice or more power to kind of stand up for what you believe in. So I'm kind of curious what else it was maybe after experiencing that trauma and those experiences that really pushed you into learning more about the sacred sexuality so that you could share it in a more, you said you like to be able to put it together in more formal ways now, a way that can be heard in educating to others rather than just going out and saying the things.
Yeah, again, I started reading books. For example, the Sofia book that I referenced earlier was really amazingly beautiful to me. And I started then getting opportunities to explore Tantra and receive sexual healing sessions. And I found an amazing teacher, two amazing teachers actually, in different places. And really was able to learn through reading and hearing the information and also directly applying it to myself and learning how to be in touch with my own body and my own sexual energy and how to hold myself and be present. Because for me, I have a long and illustrious history of disassociating. Or so disassociating, if people haven't heard that before, is when your awareness or your consciousness is not in touch with your body anymore. Some people sometimes, like, your energy will leave your body. You're not dying, but like your energy, it's oftentimes, if you've heard of fight, flight, freeze, and then there's another one, fawn, fight, flight, or freeze. Oftentimes when people freeze, they also disassociate. Their minds or their awareness goes out of their body. And I often, if people have an experience of not feeling safe as children or in any type of situation, really, they can disassociate. And so learning about that and learning how to be with myself and be in my body were all big steps. I'm still learning how to be in my body.
So I talk about The Sims a lot. I don't necessarily know if I would say I believe in like simulation theory, but I think that there's an interesting concept. I like to put things to visual terms. So kind of what you were saying with disassociating, I like to say that my higher self, or the avatar in me, takes over, the person who's in charge of creating the game or the video game you're playing, and they create this character. And sometimes there's this option in Sims where you can turn off the need to eat or the need to sleep or the need to do typical human functions and allow the higher self to kind of take over that avatar. I like to do this too when I'm doing kind of like mindless things or things that are harder for me to get through. And it's not to say that it's like bad, but it's sometimes good to allow the higher self to take over. The idea of the game Sims is to kind of give somebody the opportunity to be in charge of the computer. And my ego as Shannon then gets kind of put aside and doesn't get overwhelmed by the frustration of normal daily tasks. I mean, I've personally processed many deaths in my life, so I had to find different ways to kind of process through it. And it wasn't necessarily that I disassociated, but there's pain was still there, but my higher self had a way of being able to control it and work through it and find ways for me to channel the energy and the emotions that I was feeling in a different way. Much like I said in The Sims, how you can kind of turn off certain functions and allow your higher avatar to take over for those tasks. But I mean, at the same time, sometimes I have to remind my higher self, like, hey, I'm a human. I need to be able to like take care of myself and like hydrate and, do the thing and play the game and experience things as myself with emotions, and the feelings are really important.
Yeah, awesome. I love that explanation. And when you were saying that too, it really makes it more clear that it's not wrong to disassociate. It's not like a bad thing that we absolutely need to stop doing. I chose to, when I recognized the pattern and realized how frequently it was happening, and realized that I would like to create a different experience for myself, then I made that decision to do that. but it's not to say that it's not an appropriate response. It is an appropriate response, and that's why our bodies do it. So just just wanted to add that in there too while we're talking about it.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Definitely is important. I just like to remind myself to experience as the character that was supposed to witness it here as Shannon. But my higher self also steps in and kind of reminds me that I'm learning for this experience. Like, it doesn't have to hold me back forever and traumatize me to a point that I can't move forward and allow myself to process. I mean, sometimes there's a lot of things to process. You have to figure out how you do feel, especially after like a sexual assault. Like, you have to be like, okay, it wasn't consensual. Like, did I allow it? I did never ever actually give permission. Like, I have to process all these feelings and emotions. So disassociating for a while and kind of just distracting from the experience kind of puts it in a new perspective and gives you time to really understand what you just witnessed, what you experienced, and maybe why you witnessed it. Because I believe a lot in purpose, in everything having a purpose and having a reason that kind of pushes us forward in a different kind of way, and that the pain and the trauma didn't have to be for a waste, like giving it a purpose and defragging it and working through it.
Yeah, exactly. And so part of the reason that I decided that I wanted to like shift away from that was I realized that because those had been some of my foundational sexual experiences, I was then my not regular, but like my average or typical experience that I would have in when I was being sexual with myself or with others, I would still be able to physically feel things, but not that much. Like, I had much less connection to my sensations of my physical body. I still felt a lot of energy moving, and it still felt good most of the time, but I noticed that I was kind of numb in certain areas. I also didn't really have orgasms for most of my life. And so that was something that I felt like I wanted to experience, and that's why I started to really focus a lot of time and energy into that area of my life.
It seems like you've really had to work through and process a lot of different sexual traumas in your life. And I'm curious if you have any sort of advice or even daily rituals or practices that you can share with maybe other women that have been also dealing with this sexual trauma, this sexual abuse, this weight that is upon them. What is something maybe you could explain to help them get through that process?
I think there's a practice that my teacher, who I'm currently working with, shares. Her name is Naomi Love, and she has a school that's called the Wiselmen Medicine Path. And she has shared with me and with us a practice called the Art of Inner Alchemy. And it is a way that we can teach ourselves how to be with ourselves and how to experience what we are experiencing and how to like integrate that. And so I think this is a really foundational practice. It has 7 steps. So it's once you get it down, it's really useful in really in any situation, but in situations where maybe there's an emotional response happening or a thought pattern that you'd like to shift into a different experience. But the summary, yeah, she's got, and I can send you a link to, she has written a lot about this and has really great like step-by-step things. But the general idea is that we are tuning in when we notice something. We actually notice it. We bring our awareness to that instead of trying to push it away. So we bring our awareness there, we lean towards it and bring curiosity to it. versus judgment. So just bringing curiosity and saying, oh, I'm noticing, and speaking it out loud. I'm noticing that I'm noticing that my body is starting to shut down, or that I'm feeling, I'll just stick with that one. I'm noticing that my body is starting to shut down. And then if we acknowledge what's happening, we allow ourselves to feel it. And then we connect with that part of ourself that's having that experience, and we ask it, what do you need? And so we're looking for something that we have, that we can give ourselves, that's not reliant on, external circumstances. So, oh, I need to feel safe. And what does feeling safe feel like? Feeling safe feels like being able to take deep breaths. So I'm going to just place my hands on my body now and take 3 deep breaths.
Okay, this feels good. Let's do this together.
So then after we've given that part of ourself what it needs, then we create an affirmation that affirms the experience we'd like to have. So I am safe to open, or something like that. I am safe to open. And then the last step is just repeat as necessary, because usually there's a lot of repetition involved in these types of things.
It's sometimes really important to be able to find ways to repeat things that work for us, or reprogram ourselves with affirmations, because they don't always work at the first time. I know people expect to be able to be like, I am powerful, I am beautiful, and to just instantly feel it. But it takes time. It takes a lot of processing and realizing why things have happened, and how it can make us more powerful. I know it's part of the grief process to kind of go through traumatic experiences and to understand that, at least for me, and some people give me a hard time sometimes, I believe everything happens for a reason. I said earlier that I like to give things purpose. Like, I went through situations with partners that didn't believe in anything that I believed in. And if I would have just given up, I would have never pushed to believe the things that I wanted to believe. And I also would have never known what it was like to be with somebody who didn't respect my values. So it was really important for me to go through that so that I could learn how that felt. And I realized that the purpose was so that I understand how that felt, and can now work with other people and explain to them how I worked through that process and how important it was for me to give that a purpose. If I would have just been given everything, I wouldn't know how that feels. If I would have always had a partner that got me, I wouldn't have been able to really process through that pain and actually figure out what it was I believed in. I would have maybe just given into everything that partner wanted. It's just really important to process and to move forward and believe and stand up for what you believe in, and to create affirmations to remind yourself and reprogram yourself to hold space for yourself to evolve and to grow. And I just want to make sure that I give people space to know that that's okay to heal. That this was a process. The practice you shared earlier was a practice that was shared with you by one of your mentors, Naomi Love.
Yeah, Naomi is amazing. I'm in an apprenticeship program with her, and she sees private clients, and then she also teaches other healing practitioners. And she has naomilove.org, naomilawlove.org, and then also wisewombmedicinepath.com. She's also on social media too as Naomi Love and the Wise Womb Medicine Path.
Beautiful. Well, we'll have to get her information and try to drop some of that into the description, or Maybe we can get connected with her and even get her on too. But I want to know more about what you're doing. So I know you had mentioned the Goddess Temple and that you had been kind of traveling, and that's basically how we connected a couple years ago. Back at 3DL, you were doing the Goddess Temple, and I wandered into one of your workshops at Divine Timing. But I'm really curious, what is it that you're working on now, or what is your current soul path or mission taking you on? What's firing your soul?
Yeah, currently I am, well, I'm in this apprenticeship right now studying womb healing, which I've I've been sharing womb healing for about 6 years, and realized that I wanted to go much, much deeper with this work. And so I'm in the second year of my apprenticeship with my teacher now. So I'm really excited to be offering sessions to people again once we're able to be physically touching each other. I do share distance sessions as well, and I'm really super excited to be shifting my focus back towards working with youth again. And I do believe that I'll go back on the road with the Mobile Goddess Temple again, but that's I'm not sure when. But what I'm super excited about right now is working with youth around sacred sexuality, and also working with young girls and young people with wombs who are approaching their first bleed, and then also working with teenagers who are already having a cycle. And so working with them in conjunction with their guardians or their like a mother or an auntie or a friend who wants to share in that experience with them. So that's something that I'm really excited about. That's um, going to be shared a lot more widely soon.
Beautiful. So that's definitely a seed that I think that has been good for you to plant, because I would love to see it grow and evolve. And I think it's something that is so needed in our community. I know for me, the first experience with that was very traumatizing. I went through an experience where I was in middle school and I was dealing with a male teacher, and he wasn't letting anyone go to the restroom, and I could feel my first bleed kind of coming. I didn't really know what it was then, but I felt like something was wrong with me, and I just knew I needed to get out of that space, and he wouldn't let me leave. And I was just so awkward and uncomfortable, and I was dealing with such masculine, angry energy, and it was really overpowering. And I didn't actually have a mom. I was living in a foster home, and my grandmother didn't really like talking about those kind of things. And I didn't have anyone to really welcome me into that journey. So I'm kind of curious what your goal is, or what you think it would look like to really allow that space to be held and to help that journey happen and blossom in a beautiful way.
Yeah, so the idea is that I'm going to be connecting with the guardian, or like big sister or mother or auntie, who is wanting to um, kind of help guide the younger person. So we'll start out with like a month of just meeting with the older uh, woman, and yeah, the guide, and just deepening into our own connections with our wombs and learning about the menstrual cycle, about the entire menstrual cycle, not just about our periods. Because when people talk about the menstrual cycle, what they really like, oftentimes they're just talking about PMS and bleeding, but there's an entire cycle that includes a lot of other time. And I didn't learn about that until I was an adult, and I had to seek it out. So I want to create just a space of more understanding and embodiment and embrace of the feminine cyclical way of being, and amongst the older guides. And then we'll be able to share information about our bodies and about what I and many other people like to call herstory, because we've heard a lot of history, but just bringing it more information about how people and cultures connected with menstruation throughout time and history, and also with feminine creative power throughout time and history, because the time that we're living in right now doesn't openly value those things unless you're in a small subset of like a subculture. So just creating that space for that information to be shared in an age appropriate way, of course, and also having the opportunity to create our own menarche ritual, which is like to celebrate the first bleed, to celebrate moving into being a woman. And so, yeah, just creating that space to share information, and to also have space where the youth will have the opportunity to connect with somebody trusted in their life, as well as connect with me, who's somebody who's not in their daily life. So if they have questions that they feel embarrassed to ask to somebody who they have to continue to deal with in a really close way, then they'll have the opportunity to do that with me.
Yes. Like I said, I think that is so needed, because we all need that person to kind of look to. I know for me, it was really something I was lacking and I wish I would have had. And I think we really need like a whole episode where we explore kind of our journey and our cycles along with the moon cycles, because I would really, really love to hear kind of your perspective on that, because that's a journey that I've been kind of diving into, is how our personal cycles align with the moon.
That would be amazing. I would love that.
Yes, cool. I would love to do that too. I also really just want to respect your time and anyone that's listening. So I want to give you a chance to kind of say or channel any other messages that you feel really guided to bring us right now. What is kind of rolling through your heart that wants to come to life?
Yeah, just I'm getting a strong sense of just being, talking about, we were talking about sacred sexuality, we were talking about kind of like reclaiming our cyclical nature as women, and just what came through right then was just being really, really gentle with ourselves through it, because it is a process, and there's already enough challenge and judgment in the world that we have the opportunity to give ourselves the gift of being really gentle with ourselves through the process. And we can also be really gentle with the people around us who maybe don't have the same understanding that we are coming to have, or have a totally different opposing understanding. So just being gentle with ourselves and with each other, while also, staying in that place of being connected with what feels authentically true to us. So, maybe none of the things that I said in this whole thing resonated with somebody, and that's totally perfect. Maybe everything resonated, maybe half of it did and half of it didn't, but whatever is real for you, whatever feels resonant, whatever feels like a yes, or you feel a spark of excitement or joy around talking about or thinking about, move towards that with curiosity and gentleness.
Yeah, I think that's really important to remember, is that not everybody's always going to be on the same page as you. They're not always going to be on the same frequency as you. They may not always believe or want to believe or even look into or research the same things as you. And that's okay. That doesn't make them any less or more special or whatever than you. It makes them unique in them, and just as you are unique in you. And it's important to follow what inspires you and what makes your heart light up. So I want to respect your time, like I said, and I want people to be able to find you. So how can people find you in the virtual world?
Yeah, in the virtual world, I'm mostly on social media right now. So I'm Amara Amethyst on Facebook and YouTube and Instagram. And that is where you can find me, Amara Amethyst. Oh, and also on SoundCloud.
So, are you making music? I know you did do singing bowl ceremonies, but where are you on SoundCloud?
I'm just going to release womb, a guided womb journey on SoundCloud. Um, where I'm waiting, where my apprenticeship group, we're all like co-releasing them at the same time. So I'm not exactly sure when. I think it will probably be near the next new moon. But yeah, that's gonna be coming out there, which I'm excited about.
That is exciting. I'm really excited for you too. So it's really cool being able to hear your experience. I hope that other people have enjoyed it and they will join us in the Bring Me to Life community, which is our Facebook group. You're in there as well. So I would love for people to continue this conversation and ask us questions, or they can private message me. I believe you're welcome to them private messaging you so that they can dive deeper into this topic and really explore their healing.
Yeah, I'd be really happy to answer questions or continue the conversation. Thanks so much, Shannon.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening, those that are listening. Thank you for being able to share some things that have been things that I wanted to talk about in this space, and to let others know they're not alone in that journey, that you can work through traumatic experiences, that you can be proud of who you are sexually. And I'm really excited to get you back on a future episode of the podcast. So anyone that's listening, again, join us in the Bring Me to Life community. It's a group on Facebook where we can talk to you guys in real time. Check out bringmetolife.com with the number 2. There's so much amazing content on there. I have my other podcast, Shine On with Shannon, which is me and kind of my rituals and my kind of personal spiels. And then we have our flagship podcast where it is me, my co-host Seelma, my partner in life, and whoever else happens to pop on that podcast any day. It's kind of a wide variety of awakening and spiritual topics. So I think that this has just been a beautiful discussion. Thank you, Amara, and thank you again, all that are listening. And I hope that you tune in next time. So until next time, stay awake, shine on always. Bye. Thanks for shining on with us.